All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Lovely day in Singapore prior to the F1. We are joined today by Michael from SwapKit, who's here to talk about some of the awesome stuff that he's building. Few things to just cover. I'm Chris. I'm one of the co-founders of Switchboard. We're a cross-chain, high-performance Oracle network that lets you bring customizable data on-chain. And we're joined here by Michael from SwapKit. So why don't you start by telling us what is SwapKit and what are you guys building?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Michael Mogren. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO of SwapKit. SwapKit is an open source SDK and API that is focused on native cross-chain asset swaps. So we really try to connect blockchains that haven't traditionally talked to each other. So you see a lot of aggregators that maybe they focus on the EVM side or they focus on Solana side. We try to connect blockchains that don't speak the same language and that probably need a special protocol to get connected to each other. But our focus is really on letting the user swap the assets that they want instead of worrying about what blockchain they're on or how they get from A to B using wrapped or bridged assets where they have security issues. So yeah, our focus is primarily on wallets at this point in time. So we work with a lot of big wallets, Ledger, Trust Wallet. I was going to say OKX, they're kind of on hold for the moment. So I'll hold that one out. We work with BitGet, Token Pocket, people like that.
Got it. That's really cool. And maybe you can share some of the chains that you guys enable swaps to that maybe folks are less familiar with those paths.
Yeah, we have a big focus on Bitcoin for sure. So Bitcoin is probably more than 50% of our overall volume. Other UTXO chains as well. So what a lot of people might call dinosaur chains, but we are big fans of the UTXO chains. We work with Dogecoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin. We actually see a decent amount of volume still moving on Litecoin, surprisingly. We recently added Zcash. We also do Solana, about half dozen or so EVM chains, some Cosmos chains like Atom, Thorchain. What am I missing, guys? I think that's pretty good. XRP, yeah, that's a big one we did this year that had quite a bit of volume right away, more than I expected. I always thought the XRP people were not actually going to be using the chain. I thought, they must live on centralized exchanges, but no, we see some decent volume.
I guess one thing is, what do you think about sort of the demand for cross-chain swaps? How have you seen that grow? And, what areas have you really seen that growth the most? You mentioned Bitcoin is 50% of the swaps that you see. Was it always like that? Has it grown more? Has it gotten smaller? Where have you seen really a lot of the demand?
Yeah, I think the demand grows almost directly tied to what routes you make available. So, when we first started doing this, we were actually born out of the ThorSwap project. So we've been doing cross-chain for over 4 years now. And, at first we just had limited pairs, Bitcoin to ETH, Bitcoin to stable, ETH to stable, things like that. But as you open up more routes and give more access to long tail assets to other blockchains, it seems like the users really show up when you might not expect them to. So I mentioned XRP a minute ago. I think that's a big one, but it's interesting to see as well. Like I think there's this hypothesis that we share that ultimately people like to go play around in DeFi, but everything will settle back to Bitcoin at some point. So we focus on making trades like Trump into BTC possible. So you can go through, Jupiter and then end up going through a protocol like Chainflip and get back to Bitcoin. We do that in a single transaction. So yeah, I think as far as volume goes, if you build it, they will come, I would say.
Yeah, that's actually the other thing I was going to ask is, how you guys are built, if it's sort of like a meta aggregator approach, particularly with a lot of these chains, like let's say with Sol, working with, say, Jupiter on that point to be sort of the end layer aggregator at the local chain level.
Yeah, so we're a little bit more than just an aggregator. We are an aggregator for sure. So we connect to a lot of different protocols. We have 4 primary cross-chain protocols that we work with right now. So we started with Thorchain. We expanded out to Chainflip, Maya protocol. Recently, we've been doing a lot of work with Near Intense. I think Jazz was just up here from Garden Finance. We're doing testing with them right now, so we're going to be going live with Garden soon. So those are the real key cross-chain providers that we use. But a trick that we do is we daisy chain together different providers. So an easy example of that is we connect 1inch into anything that's tradable on Thorchain. So Thorchain has about 30 pools, and you can go, in between those pairs. That's great and that's interesting, but 1inch has 10,000 assets. So we have custom smart contracts that we've built that enable you to go from any asset on 1inch to any asset on Thorchain, and you do that with a single signature. So we really focus on that experience, so the user doesn't have to do a multi-step process. They don't have to think about gas and intermediary chains. They just submit their Bitcoin transaction. They get the final asset that they want. So we do that trick for EVMs. I mentioned 1inch. We use Uniswap directly. We have several other EVM providers. We also work with Solana SPL tokens. So we do the same thing with Jupiter as well.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I guess, that's an example maybe of how you guys bring value to the end user versus just, sort of this abstract dev integration that I think a lot of people may not be able to just crystallize in kind of that clear way.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess, one of that questions is sort of what's next on the integration front. And then I guess a related question is how you're thinking about RFQs within sort of this model. I mean, you talked about near intents, but there's definitely been, I think, a big focus, particularly for cross-chain swaps, to move to sort of this intent-based model.
Yeah, I think trading Bitcoin on chain is a big challenge, right? And we saw Thorchain take the first stab at that back starting 2021, and they had some great success. They've moved many billions in volume there, but they're using basically this V2 liquidity model, which is quite inefficient at scale. So anytime you've got a trade, you've got to move the entire pool to match the price of that trade, right? So that's where these RFQ models step in, and we've seen much better price execution that can be, much more competitive with, centralized exchanges and traditional places that people might do trading. I think that there's some shortcomings on the RFQ model as far as the decentralization. So early days, I think that it's going to be more centralized than they will be in the future. At least I hope so. I think that building is important and making things work is important, but if we don't decentralize, then those things will come back to bite us in the long run. So I think it's really important when you look at the RFQ models to, not just build a wrapper on top of Coinbase and Binance, but to actually build a protocol that, is permissionless, that is non-custodial, that provides all the things that we look for in blockchains. Well, still being able to have more efficient liquidity than you see with like traditional AMM models.
Yeah, I guess it's more in the context of, let's say you have all these steps in between. If you think many things will move to sort of this RFQ model of just trying to match the coincidence of needs instead of routing through, let's say, 4 or 5 hops.
Yeah, I think there will be some of that, but market makers, they have a limited depth as far as what they're going to handle. And I think that long tail will always live on AMMs. So, Bitcoin, stable coins, really anything in like the top 100 of crypto, I see that being served very well by RFQ models. But I think that long tail assets, especially up and coming tokens, those things are going to be traded on AMMs, and being able to connect those two worlds, I think is going to be important.
Yeah, no, makes sense. I guess the other question is, is sort of the monetization model for you guys and how you're handling that and thinking about that.
Yeah, so for us, we basically, we have our open source SDK, which we put out in the world for free, and we hope people contribute to it. And we've seen some great contributions there from wallets, from blockchains that want to be included, kind of in our ecosystem. Where we make our fees is on the API side. So we don't charge anything for API access. We have a simple partner dashboard where people can come and get onboarded. But what we do have is a fee sharing model. So we have a basically sliding scale. We charge, for certain tranches, up to a certain point, we'll charge this many basis points, and you make it to the next tier, you pay less, et cetera. Those things are becoming more and more competitive, and we're seeing opportunities to really optimize even just among different pairs. So stable to stable, you can't charge as much as you can for, some long tail into Bitcoin. So we're actively, dynamically adjusting those things and kind of learning some lessons as the ecosystem grows. But yeah, I think ultimately, fees are going to always get lower over time as more competition comes into the space. Everybody recognizes that. And that's fine as long as you can keep growing your volume, right? So you've got to be able to compensate, grow your volume in exchange for the fees getting reduced over time. But I think that if you can keep introducing novel routes, keep giving the users the things they're looking for, then there'll always be room for some fees there.
Yeah, I guess another thing, which maybe is contradictory to some of the earlier points that you have, is whether or not, or I guess what your thoughts are on some of the new permission sort of RWA chains that are coming out now, and whether that's something you guys would be open to supporting, um, given sort of the growth in that space.
Yeah, it's definitely on our roadmap, but I wouldn't say something we put a lot of resources into at this point in time. Yeah, everything is competing priorities. So for us, that's not a big one. Going back, just one more thing about fees, I think I probably should have mentioned is, we provide mechanisms for our partners to earn fees, which I think is really a big pain point for a lot of wallets, for a lot of integrators. Uh, you know, depending which protocol you're working with, maybe the fees are going to come in 20 different assets, and you're going to get a whole bunch of coins. You're going to get a whole bunch of gas assets. You're going to have to trade them all out. You're going to face regulatory issues around that. So that's one of the things that we do as SwapKit is provide a simple way for our partners to get paid out in stable coins. We'll work with you depending on what your requirements are in your region. So if you just need, monthly invoicing, if you want to get creative on the legal setup there, those are some things we can help with. But definitely a big focus for us is just making those fees as easy as possible. Typically, what you do is enter your EVM address, on our platform, and you'll just get paid out in stables, on a regular basis. So you don't have to think about, how do the fee collection mechanisms work? What type of assets am I earning? How do I trade them out? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So I guess on the roadmap, you'd mentioned you're swamped with many different things this moment. What's sort of the next sort of immediate push that you guys have?
I mentioned garden finance. So, we're very heavy in the Bitcoin ecosystem. We really think that Bitcoin kind of got left out of this whole DeFi revolution, and we've been working really hard over the last few years to bring Bitcoin into that universe. Garden really is laser focused on bringing Bitcoin liquidity into DeFi and doing it in a way that is secure for the users. So I really like their multi-signature design, the way that they're not giving up custody to themselves or even to the protocol in most cases. So they have this multi-signature process where basically the solver and the user both have to agree, and then they can make a transaction complete. So Garden's a big one that we're QAing right now. Always adding more blockchains, always looking to add more partners. So I think last year when I was here in Singapore, we had 17 blockchains. Now we got, I think, 23, but those are getting added more and more rapidly all the time. So, there's diminishing returns, I think, with blockchains. So once you have, the majors and the assets, but there's always something interesting popping up. There's always, going to be the hyper liquids of the world coming online or things like that. So yeah, we've really been focused on spot up until this point in our business, but I see perps is definitely going to be something that we tackle over the next 12 months.
Yeah, I mean that'd be really interesting, just because I think sort of handling the perp side is just a totally different game when you introduce margining versus just spot. So
Yeah, perps is a big one. And, spot and DeFi has also just been basically market orders, right? So as we see limit orders coming in, we've seen that on the EVM side. We've seen that on, single chain, basically. So Jupiter's done a great job with doing limit orders, but we don't really see that in the cross chain world. We've got some other protocols I don't think I can talk about quite yet, but coming online very soon that are going to be really focused on these limit order scenarios. So I think that's going to be a big one for us in addition to perps as well, is just, having limit orders on chain that are totally transparent, but give the users really that ability to execute at a given price instead of just kind of leaving it up to the market.
I guess maybe this is too technical for this, but if not, I'd just be curious if you guys are thinking of that from a sort of cross-chain automation perspective, or from letting the wallet or sort of your partner handle the logic around that.
No, it would definitely have to be automated from our perspective. One of our core principles of SwapKit is we never take custody of a user's funds. We don't want to work with a situation where the wallet has to do that either. So we want to work with protocols to build out these features so that, if you have this concept of custody, it's custody by a validator set. It's custody by, the blockchain that runs a given protocol. It's not custody by, your wallet partner or, us.
Yeah, I mean, it's less the custody side. It's more for like limit orders, for example. It's just waiting for sort of an RFQ that matches, or a stream that matches that price, and then executing it at the time of the transaction.
Yeah, I think that it's a few too many moving pieces. If you try to ask a wallet to do that, I think it needs to sit inside of a protocol and they can act on it, at the moment that it's possible, because it's going to happen inside of a block. There's going to be so many, competing orders that you can't wait for, some API to tell you, oh, the price is here now. Okay, try to submit it. Especially with protocols like Bitcoin, when you've got, they say on average 10 minutes, but we see much longer than that block times. So yeah, you've got to have your asset kind of locked into a protocol somewhere where it's able to be executed quickly.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess with that, any parting thoughts for the audience on what's next for SwapKit, and sort of the things that you guys are interested in beyond sort of expanding Bitcoin DeFi and cross-chain swaps?
I guess I just say if you're a wallet, if you're a DApp, we're here to help. We'd love to talk to you guys. Uh, One thing that I didn't get to talk about too much is the AML component, which is really important to make DeFi succeed right now is, being able to offer to not just your integrators, but also to the users that they're operating in a safe manner, that they're not going to get their funds intermingled with, DPRK, that they're not going to have law enforcement breathing down their neck because they integrated your API, things like that. But I do think to kind of take the next step as an industry, we're going to need to have privacy, because if I interact with you, if I buy something from you in the real world, if I do a swap in your protocol, uh, exposing all of my balances and everything I've ever done, it's not an ideal privacy scenario, right? And I think that privacy and AML kind of have a conflict, and hopefully we're going to see some more movement into, existing blockchains supporting privacy a bit better than they do now. People using privacy chains a bit more. I think now is our time in the regulatory environment to be able to support that. And I think that will kind of change the AML equation a little bit as well.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. Well, thank you, Michael. And where can we find you?
Swapkit.dev. We have a booth over here. Reach out on Telegram. Yeah, happy to chat.
Perfect. Well, thank you.